Targeting a statue of Abraham Lincoln in Washington, D.C., calling the image of a freed slave kneeling at Lincoln's feet a monument to white supremacy. As anti-racism demonstrations continue across the country, our next guest says those responsible for defacing and tearing down statues should be prosecuted, quote, to the fullest extent of the law. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is here, and I'm quoting you, sir. So what is it that you would like to see happen to those who are unlawfully tearing down those statues?
I'd like to see them prosecuted. There's consequences for the actions they take. There are already laws on the books, but we need people to enforce them, the mayors across this country. And if they don't, I've introduced legislation that would withhold federal money to those cities who do not. You cannot continue to have this happen. And this isn't about George Floyd when you look at these statues of what they're doing. Look what happened in Madison. They took down Lady Freedom. They took down Hans, an immigrant who died, an abolitionist who died in the Civil War. But what happened in San Francisco? St. Sarah was taken down. Do you know in 2015, I prayed with Pope Francis, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden in front of St. Sarah? But you know whose district that's in? Nancy Pelosi's, and she has not said a word. Joe Biden has not said a word. That's why the mob continues. That's lawlessness. We believe in the rule of law, and America has to stop this portion. You have a right to protest. Floyd has a right for justice. That's appalling what has happened to him. But those who loot, those who tear down statues, they should have consequences for their actions.
You felt compelled to write an opinion piece on this week, Congressman. If you are asking, quote, where will they draw the line, which many are, it has become clear they won't. That's because they are mobs, you write. They aim to upend society, not reform it. As history shows, tearing down statues is a symbol of revolution in all countries. What is your message there?
Message there is America has always strived to be a more perfect union. Mobs are out of control in this process. They do not strive to make us a more perfect union, just the actions in Madison. And they didn't stop there with statues. You know what else they did? They literally knocked out a Democrat state senator who stood with them. They knocked the individual out. That's what I believe when there are no lines. There are no lines. They're lawless in the process. They don't believe in a mission except for destruction. That's what we must stop so we have an ability to have a change of ideas, exchange those ideas, and strive to become that more perfect union and work to make sure that America is stronger. I'm looking for individuals who want to rebuild, renew, and restore America. I know we're going through a perfect storm with COVID, with people out of work, with people out of school. But this is not an opportunity and should not allow that we break down the rule of law. We are better than that. And I think we can rise to an occasion to do something better.
And you, of course, are taking on those who are calling to unlawfully tear down those statues without having a debate, a discussion, or a vote on it. There are protesters that are showing up at these monuments and statues in D.C. and other places who are having that discussion, and they are raising points like this. Here's one protester on the ground outside the Emancipation Monument. I'll get your reaction to this protester on the other side. Listen.
This statue right here embodies the white supremacy and the disempowerment of black people that is forced upon us by white people. Yeah. Yeah. That is why we're tearing this statue down.
Congressman, how do you respond?
Well, my response is if people have a difference of opinion, just like art, you see something different. But there's a process if you do not like it. But do you understand the history of that? And I think we should go through that process if somebody, you don't walk up and tear something down, just that I don't walk up and knock somebody out. Or if I disagree with something, I don't change it. I move through the process and what we have in America. That's what we call when we talk about democracy. If you break down the rule of law, you break down society. And that's exactly what is transferring right now. And that's what has to be stopped.
I want to transition now to the president's popularity. We were just talking about some of the latest Fox News polling numbers and how that is affecting some of the Senate races that we're seeing as far as polling is concerned. Cal Cunningham and Tom Tillis, obviously in the state of North Carolina, There is concern, Congressman, and I'll ask you to speak to it, that the president's sagging popularity as far as recent polling numbers is starting to affect some of these Senate races where Tom Tillis is now trailing Cunningham, the Democrat there, by a couple points. The Georgia Senate race now has the incumbent David Perdue ahead, but within the margin of error. Perdue polling 45% to 42%. Are you concerned, Congressman?
Look, if the election was today, yes, you're concerned. Can we do better? Yes, we can. Who's the best to articulate what the future is? To me, who's best to rebuild, renew, and restore America? Who's best to rebuild this economy? Is it going to be Joe Biden? Does anyone know what Joe Biden's policies are? Joe Biden yesterday said there was 120 million Americans who got killed from COVID. Joe Biden hasn't really been out of the basement yet. I think when you have that contrast going, I think President Trump will get reelected. There's been a special election during COVID, which was one of the most difficult times. It was in California, from a Democrat seat that they won by 9 points, that Hillary carried by a majority. No other Republican seat in Congress is like that. And you know what? An individual who has never run before, Mike Garcia, a first-generation American, defeated the Democrat. And they changed the election process where it was by all mail-in ballots. So yes, polling would say one thing, but the outcome said something much different. So yes, this is going to be a competitive race, and it should be about ideas, though. And I think once the ideas are out there, is Joe Biden going to let the socialists run his policies like he let AOC in and others? I think America wants to see where people stand on who's best standing up to China, who's best about rebuilding this economy, and who's best to make the next century the American century.
If I could, with the 30 or so seconds that I have left, ask you about the recent spikes in coronaviruses. Obviously, you're dealing with this in your state as well, but the spikes that we're seeing in Texas, Arizona, Florida, and other places obviously causing great concern. And some saying this will be a defining moment in President Trump's presidency and a defining moment in re-election for the president in 2020, depending on where we are a couple months from now. What are your thoughts on that this morning?
Well, I have a real concern. And remember, we're coming after where we saw those thousands of young people and others coming out to protest. It was a concern that they were close to one another. Now we're seeing the outcome from that. We've got better testing. We've got better tracing. This is a spike. We see it. We need to deal with it. Remember, this was a virus we did not invite, came from a distant land. But we will defeat this together. The progress we're making on a vaccine, the progress that we're making on therapies, this is what needs to happen. And that's really being led by this president. The FDA has transformed what we've been able to do. We've tested more than 28 million Americans already, about 500,000 in the process almost every day. That's an improvement, and that's where we're going to see. But as more people gather together, if they're not wearing a mask, not washing their hands, not keeping social distance. When I watched that drone video of Los Angeles, where it went for a mile, people shoulder to shoulder, you knew there was going to be a spike, and now we're seeing the outcome of that. We have to be smart about this, and we have to be able to trace, we have to be able to treat, and we've got to make sure we build and find the vaccine that will stop this. Had China not lied to us and to the rest of the world, 95% of this never would have happened.
All right, Congressman McCarthy, hitting on a wide range of topics for us this morning. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.